Hi there, Hillary here for WaterLogged on behalf of saltwateraquarium.com. If you've been following along with my build series, you know that I just finished with the rockscape in my tank and now I'm ready to add salt water to the tank. But before I can add the water, I need to actually make the salt water. So I'm gonna give you some of the tools that I use to make salt water. I'm gonna give you some of the tips that Red Sea recommends. And of course, we're gonna go ahead and make the salt water so that we can get it added to the tank. So here are the list of things that I use when it comes to making salt water. First off, you're gonna need a mixing container. Personally, I use a large Brute trash can that you can buy at your home hardware store. Along with that, you need to make sure you get a lid to go on top of it, and if you want ease of moving that trash can around, go ahead and get yourself a set of wheels that just screws onto the base of the trash can. Promise it'll make your life a lot easier. Next up, you're going to need an RODI unit. This is one of the things that Red Sea recommends as an absolute must when it comes to making salt water. In addition to that RODI unit, it will come with some hose, but I recommend that you get a little bit extra depending on where you want to set it up, just to make sure you have enough length in that to make it easy for yourself. Along with the RODI unit, you're going to be connecting it to your trash can, so I would recommend getting a float valve. This makes it nice, that way you can turn it on to make water and walk away, and you're not gonna have a trash can that's overflowing. It'll automatically stop the unit, and you don't necessarily have to be there to do that. Next thing that you will need for mixing the salt water is a mixing pump. You can use whichever pump that you prefer, just make sure that it's the appropriate gallons per hour. And something else I would recommend getting with that is a hose. This will allow you to put the water from the mixing container directly into your tank, or you could fill jugs and use those to fill your tank. After that mixing pump, you are gonna want a heater. Most of the time you need to heat up your water to make it the appropriate temperature for your tank. So to do that, you're gonna need a thermometer to go along with that heater to make sure you got your right temperature. Next up is going to be a refractometer. Now for this specifically, I would recommend using the Red Sea refractometer. If you look at commercial refractometers that are available on the market, they are going to be measuring the salt water, not seawater. There's a slight variation when you come to looking at the measurements, and you might have to do a little bit of extra math if you get one of the commercial ones. So go ahead, save yourself some time, and use the Red Sea refractometer. Next thing you are going to want to have is a cup to measure out the amount of salt that you're going to need to add to the water. I recommend getting something that is specific just to your mixing station. That way you're not grabbing a different cup every time. And let's be honest, you really don't want to be mixing stuff from your kitchen with the stuff that you have for your aquarium. And of course, the last thing that you're going to need to make salt water is the salt. When it comes to Red Sea, you have two different options, and that would be the Red Sea salt and the Coral Pro salt. I'm gonna be using the Coral Pro, but if you wanna know how I got to that decision, go back a couple of videos and watch how I picked out the salt along with my recipe. I've got it all explained there. Now, here are a couple of tips that Red Sea recommends to make salt water with success. Go ahead and fill your mixing container with RODI water. Once it's full, take the temperature of that water. You want to make sure that it's not more than 68 degrees Fahrenheit. If it's a little bit warm, give it some time to cool down. Once it is at the correct temperature, you can go ahead and add salt of your choice to the water and let it mix until the salt is dissolved and the water is clear, but no more than 2 hours. Once you have your salt water mixed, if you are making it to do a water change, you can go ahead and bring that up to the temperature of your tank. But since I'm adding it to my tank for the first time, I'm not as worried about that step. Now, if you are doing a water change or if you are just a busy individual making salt water, there are time limits on how long you can have the salt water sit before you use it. With the Coral Pro, you've only got 12 hours before you need to get that water in the tank. But if you're using the Red Sea salt, you have up to 7 days. Just make sure to store it in a container with a lid in a cool, dark area. All right, let's go ahead and get to making some salt water. Now, normally I have this set up in my garage, but since I've got to make 115 gallons of salt water, I thought I would save myself the time and the energy of hauling in 5-gallon buckets at a time. So I have this hook up to the RODI unit, and I'm just gonna go ahead and get started making the RODI water. And I'll be back as soon as this trash can is filled. All right, my trash can is filled with the RO water. When you read the bucket, Red Sea recommends to add 37 grams per liter of water for your salt. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to adding my salt to the bucket. Okay, now that I have my salt mixing with my water, I wanna make sure that I go ahead and close and seal up my bucket of salt. You wanna get that bag sealed really well and then put the lid back on it and store it in a nice, dark, dry area. Okay, while we are waiting for the salt water to mix, I thought I would tell you a little bit about the Red Sea refractometer. Now, if you're not familiar with refractometer and what it is, how to use it, I'm gonna go over that real quick. So when you open it, you get the refractometer right here. You also get a little pipette, and then you get a little tool to calibrate it. Now, if you pull this back piece out right here, get it out, it gives you the instructional pamphlet that will tell you how to calibrate and go about that if you ever need to do so. I'm not going to tell you right now. So pull out your refractometer. Now, how this thing works is you are going to open this little cover and you will use that pipette that's in the container to grab a couple of drops of the water that you're trying to measure and put it on the lens right here. You'll close this flap and then you're going to look through this other end. You can adjust this back and forth to make sure that it is clear and that you can read the inside. Now you're going to point this towards a light source, and when you look inside you're going to see a screen that has blue and white. Where that blue meets the white, you're going to read that line, and that will be the measurement of your salinity. So if you look through this one specifically, on the left hand side you're going to see the measurements for specific gravity. On the right hand side it will give you those numbers for parts per thousand. Either one is okay. They're both going to be the same when it converts. It's just whatever your preference is to use it. Now again, they give you the tools to calibrate this in the instructional pamphlet and in the case. You shouldn't need to do so, but if you ever do, this little black piece right here is what you're going to lift up on, and this is where you're going to calibrate it. But if you have any questions, read through the instructions or send them a message. And hopefully this has given you an insight on how to use your refractometer. All right, the water is done mixing, so it's time to start adding it to the tank. Try not to make a mess everywhere. All right, let's go. All right, as you can see, the tank is filled with water. I'm so excited. I cannot believe the day is finally here. Now make sure that you tune back in for the next video where we're gonna start everything up, and then I'm gonna show you a little bit about how it all connects to the ReefBeat app. All right, that's it for this video. This has been Hillary for WaterLogged on behalf of saltwateraquarium.com. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.